for a lot of people, they love the way that sounds. It sounds very exciting to work with jaguars and civets and coyotes, even if they might be a little bit spooked. But a lot like, I just finished reading a book, Lessons in Chemistry. So this is going to be sort of lessons in biology. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what that is, and then a little bit about how you got into that, how you got into, I mean, so much studying and so much research. So cheers to you.
So I think my earliest interest in conservation work and in studying and working with wildlife were watching those classic television documentaries in the 1970s with Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and Marlin Perkins going off into the wilds in his pith helmet and his safari outfit. And I have very vivid memories of actually seeing the cover of a television, like old TV guide, which is something that you read before you could see what was on TV through the internet. And the TV guide cover said the word extinct.
Oh.
And I asked my Baba, what does that word mean? And she explained it to me, that there's no more individuals of that species. And I ripped that cover off the TV guide and I pinned it to the wall in the little bedroom where I would sleep when I stayed over at my Baba's house. And I would contemplate this problem and how do we prevent the tiger from going extinct. Now, I don't know if the tiger in question was the Bali tiger or the Caspian tiger, but suffice it to say, extinction is not as clear a term as many of us believe it to be, or at least as children would believe. But I did, that would have been the nexus of what became a lifelong pursuit of wanting to effectively be an agent of change. Wow. And how I would go about that, and how would that come to be. It isn't as important as that drive to be some means of change of that fate. That fate was unacceptable. Extinction was not an option. So how would little Chrissy solve it?
Exactly. Like as a young child, did it fire up your curiosity, or did teachers or your Baba, like who inspired you to say, you know, you're a girl power, you're powerful, you're going to go out and, you know, fix this? I mean, I dare say a lot of young kids, they don't know what extinction is.
Well, you know, I didn't know the word, but it seemed like a big scary word when it was written in red letters across the face of this beautiful creature. And for me, I had a very simplistic view, a childlike image that I would go between the hunter and the prey. So I wanted, like, my childhood fantasy was doing that dive. No.
I love that visual too.
And literally my question was, would I be able to catch a bullet meant for the last of its kind, meant for the last individual of this vanishing species? And if I did, if I could, if I was brave enough and if I was fast enough, would my life have been, you know, forfeit in vain? And would I have made a difference? And you know, this little sort of puzzle in my mind grew as I progressed in my understanding of even something as simple as reproduction. Like, you need a boy and a girl to have a species continue.
Yeah, yeah.
So I kind of realized that, you know, that I needed more information. My understanding was lacking. And so, yes, to answer your question, education was always an important part of my childhood, not just to sort of solve this problem, but to also solve the other problems that I faced as a child, be that poverty and fear of poverty and fear of homelessness and all those things, those little bugaboos. So I'm very lucky that my mother was a staunch advocate of education in many, many ways. Um,
Yay, mom. Yay for mom. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of people would say, I'm guessing that I know I would, oh, it's so exciting that you're dealing with, Jaguars and civets and, horseshoe crabs and all these things. But you're an urban girl, you're a city girl, right? So it's like, how you got to that point, this love of animals. And then all that schooling, I mean, a lot of people who are watching, they might say, I would like to do that or to work with animals, but then they might be intimidated by the amount of schooling that you've gone through. I mean, how do you, say maybe coach or encourage those people to say, you too can do this?
Well, I don't know if my circumstance, is necessarily a blueprint for
Mhm.
what I accomplished, but I will say that um, I never quite understood the mentality of opposition to school. And I guess I realized that school for me was a safe space. School for me was a place where I had structure, where I had adults in the room, where I had guidance, where I had friends and safety and opportunity and fun. Um, so for me, I could never quite get my head around the idea that kids don't want to go to school. Like, what's the alternative? Work? Like,
Playing.
you're 15, you want to go and like have a baby and like live in a trailer home? Like, nothing other than school seemed appealing.
But who was fueling your curiosity? Was it just you or your mother, or was it your
So,
teachers?
so I grew up in a matriarchy of female power, all of whom had educational incentives. My mother she was an artist.
Mm.
She was a hippie. She was a free spirit. Um, but she was a learner. She was an educator and a learner, like intuitively. She didn't go to school or do well in school. She studied art. She even failed out of art school, even though she was a very accomplished artist. She had learning disabilities and emotional disabilities that made learning difficult for her. But her inherent curiosity and passion for knowledge and incredible intellect that manifest in trips to botanic gardens and trips to the zoo and trips to historic homes and trips to the Natural History Museum and the Art Museum and the Frick collection and the cloisters and all these places with historical, artistic, botanical, scientific, and
That's where a lot of people.
archaeological knowledge.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a teacher in the New York City school system, and she would say sometimes on these summer sojourns that she would have to do in teaching, people would feel sorry for her because she had to be in New York. And she's like, "Are you kidding? We can just go to the Natural History Museum, or like you say, the Frick or Museum
Yep.
of Art, and see the real things. Like we're right there, just to be able to tap into like so easily." But so as you went along, what were the challenges, and then what were the rewards that kept you, going onto each rung of the success ladder?
So I think the challenges were academic predominantly. I watched my brother struggle. He was 2 years older than I, and he was the most intelligent, probably still is the most intelligent person I have ever met. And
So,
yet he struggled academically with the very basics. He was dyslexic, he was dysgraphic, he was agoraphobic. Um, and so he would hide, he would hide in the basement fixing up bicycles. He would hide in his room reading huge books, like gigantic tomes, the bigger the better, and losing himself in that. He would tinker and fix anything and everything that he found that was broken or that needed a little TLC. And we were little kids and we watched Star Trek, and somehow he actually made a working phaser. Like, I don't even know how. Like, okay, it didn't stun you, but it had the little lights that went on, and it was a perfect replica. Like, he could just make things from nothing, and he was an incredible engineer. You know, he continues to be an incredible intellect, and yet he did not complete the 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's a
And
genius, really, to be able to do all that. I mean, and here you are with so many degrees. Bill would joke like more degrees than a thermometer. So
I've collected them all. And
I know, I love that. I love the honorifics too. That's why I asked you before the conversation, do you go by Dr. Cologne? I love that, especially, for women. But so how do you balance now your career and, you've traveled to all these exotic places. Do you have a preference for teaching or for the field work, or how does that balance work?
I think at this stage in my life, teaching is a default simply because it is much easier. But as you have already mentioned, much of my field work is local. So I can do field work in Brooklyn. I can do field work in Queens, in the Bronx. I take the Long Island Railroad to go swap out my acoustic devices, my audio moths in Coyote territory. And I go, I take the B train to Plum Beach to go study the horseshoe crabs and do my tagging with them every spring. And I take my students with me. So I have of late come to learn that there is no teaching without research. There is no field work without teaching. All of my research now relies upon a large team of students who are enthusiastic or not, interested or not, strong or not.
I would
Any student will do. I will put them all to work, and they will all become rock stars within 2 hours.
100%. Do you ever take guests? Like, could I go on one of your field trips?
Absolutely. It is now
Yes.
mandatory since you've asked on camera.
But I would love to. I love all that. I mean, I've done garden design in Ecuador, and like you get some of these insects and critters, I'll say, that are, to most Americans, they have that ooh factor. But I love all that. I love learning about things we don't know. I mean, presently I'm reading the book, The Sixth Extinction, and the things they talk about, those little zoolids or whatever. I mean, that's just so cool to me. I would love it.
Yeah, well, you're more than welcome to come out. And
Okay.
it's a fun afternoon. It's a ton of work, and it's a citizen science project. And so what that means is that every student who participates is now officially a scientist, at a higher level than a citizen scientist, which, like, you could come out for the day and that would be great, and you can pitch in and do your share. But the students have all been through a semester long learning experience of doing science and collecting data
Wow.
and reading the peer literature. And so by the end of the semester, they're already, they're bio majors. They already know the basics of biology. They're about to graduate, and now they go out and do this field work. And it's way more than citizen science. They are now research collaborators. And that's, if I'm not doing that with every single one of my students, I'm not doing my job. That's my new opinion.
Yeah. So when you say you're preparing them, like, will they, by and large, have a career in academia? Will they work for, corporations, or, what's the track that you see that if someone is studying biology, what they would do?
I think most of them, we're a community college, we're a feeder school for nursing programs and for 4-year undergraduate degrees, like through Brooklyn College or Medgar Evers College. So the answer is, not many of them will opt into a career in field work or conservation biology. Some of them will go on to a baccalaureate degree or a nursing degree. A few will go on into maybe a pre-med program or medical school. But I think that when we focus too much of our energy, as we often do, on those few that go into science, I think we miss the main point, which is that we're all in science. When you're making a medical decision for your toddler, you better know the difference between data and bunk.
Yep.
And
People
so we have to see science literacy as a form of citizenship, of civic engagement.
and clear thinking. I think that people are either they're afraid of science because they don't know, what it is, and so they're reluctant to embrace it. Like you say, um, if somebody wanted to get into this, what you're doing. I mean, I love science. I love scientists. Did you have a hard time when you were coming up as a female, or were there many in the field, or is it pretty male?
So I came up into science through the Bronx Zoo for all intents and purposes.
Mm.
That is where I made inroads directly to interact with scientists. And most of the scientists at the Bronx Zoo at that time were husband and wife teams.
Oh, interesting.
Or were women, women who were vets, vet techs, nutritionists,
Mm.
even keepers. It was historically a male field because keeper was seen as garbage man, janitor for animals. And then, in the 70s and 80s, it became a little bit more academic and it was a little bit more respected, but still really crappy pay. So that was like, oh, women can do this job because it has a modicum of respect, but women will still be willing to do it even though it pays very poorly. And slowly over time, and while I was sort of in that medium of in the zoo world, it became more of a respected academic pursuit, and you could see keepers publishing research papers. So I grew up in a science community that was very much inclusive, diverse, and supportive of women and supportive of others. Nobody at the zoo was fighting over grant money. We were all pitching in and
Mm.
doing what we could to to the betterment of the end goal, which was the animals, the
Mm.
species, the habitat, the communities at risk.
Mm.
So we would say our ultimate goal is to work ourselves out of a job.
Yeah. That sounds, I hope it's not a rare situation, but it sounds very special, regardless, which is wonderful. And I'm sure that you're imparting that on, to your students. What do you,
Yeah, I think ecology is a field where nobody's fighting, everybody's holding hands and singing Kumbaya. And I do see some of my colleagues in other fields where it is a little bit more adversarial, and some of them do find conflict in their academic world.
yeah. What do you see for the future, both for the animals and for the study of life and biology and ecology? And I mean, do you see climate chaos favoring another kind of extinction, a mass extinction, or are you hopeful for things?
Well, I think that extinction is inevitable. I think that, when we say silly things like save the animals,
Save the bears.
it's yeah, it's a naive perspective. Protect Mother Earth or protect the Earth or save the planet. The planet is just fine. Mother Earth is just fine. Thank you very much. Nature is just fine. Humanity, not so much.
We're having a hard time with the human part of it. Well,
Well, if you think about it, we are the last species of human on Earth. We are not the latest and the greatest. We are just the only one left. There were lots of others. So
mhm.
it would be a little bit like you seeing a Siamese cat and me telling you there used to be hundreds of other kinds of cats, ones that were big and small, that could roar, that could climb trees in the savannas of Africa, that could run 70 kilometers an hour. And you would be like, nah, that's crazy talk. There's only one kind of cat. Well, we look at humans and we think we're special. No, we're not special. We're just the last ones, and we're holding on by our little pinky nails. And the earth may very well do just fine without us. But if we don't protect the earth, the only thing that we are destroying with certainty is our planet, our home, our food supply, our water supply. So, Mother Earth might do this with humanity, and we'll just be a footnote.
Sorry about that little glitch there. My Marty Scorsese had an itch or
Oh,
something.
dear. Well, so
Yeah.
to answer your question, what do I see in the future?
Right.
With research in the sort of the near-term future, again, I came of age in an era when field biologists had to go live in the jungle. They had to go eat rocks for breakfast and crawl around in the mud and put their lives on the line in some weird country and get tropical diseases and run around being chased by elephants or something. Nowadays, young biologists can look on their iPhone to track the elephant herd that is transmitting data via satellite.
Yeah.
And when that herd gets too close to, say, a plantation, they can just text the plantation owner and say, hey, you've got an issue on your left flank, you need to go send out some thunder flash to keep the elephants from going over the fence. And they could literally do that from Starbucks in Midtown.
That's so cool. I mean, we just
Yeah.
had another, and there has been more than a couple of the whales that have beached on the shores here. We're right across from you, from Manhattan, but they're dead, and so they were also pointing out that, like you point out, they're tracking them already. So I guess we're learning more about it. I mean, it may just be all the more disconcerting that we're tracking and we still don't know how to prevent it, but it is exciting that, like you say, you can do it from almost anywhere.
You can track whales and sharks by drone.
Wow.
And there's actually a vibrant population of whales in New York City. There are now resident whales in New York. And the reason is because they've restored one of the most disgusting, greasy little fish on the planet called the bunker, or the
Oh, yeah.
menhaden.
They use that a lot in cooking now also.
Oh my
Shell.
God, we used to use it as bait when we went
I
crabbing, but
That's what
you
Bill said,
know,
the same thing. It's bait, but they're looking for local fish or fish that are plenty, fish that you don't need to farm raise. So there's lots of different reasons.
right. So when we see a lot of dead animals, I always have to remind myself it means that there's a lot of live ones. It's the same with coyotes. We see a lot of coyote roadkill, but that just means that we've got coyotes in fair numbers in the urban matrix.
Do you
So I
see
think
do you see them in Central Park?
there was one spotted. Usually the birders, again, they
Mm.
can text you. Birders out there at 5 a.m. Oh, I just saw a coyote in the Ramble or in the North Woods or in the ravine. And so I think we're going to have to start learning how to live with urban wildlife, because as we destroy habitat, we're pushing animals closer into our landscape and our matrix, and nature's very adaptable, so they're going to figure it out and find a way. I think in terms of young scientists, they should become very comfortable with data management, because we're accumulating so much data that the real challenge is, how do you store it? How do you process it? How do you analyze it? How do you share it? And data management and technology, digital technology is the conservation wave of the future.
That's a very, very good point. Well made. I mean, every scientist observes and shares the information. So I do think this next generation is very accustomed to sharing a lot, whether it's social media, but the management of the data is a very good point. So hopefully that becomes more and more relevant. So we're gonna get wrapping up here for a little bit. I can't believe how much time goes by so quickly, but so one point, like, has it been a challenge when you manage your home life and your career, or is that rather seamless? I think you said your husband is also a teacher, is that right?
Well, he's a banker and he teaches some banking program, courses at Columbia.
Okay,
Um,
a little bit different.
right. And his passion is actually art and history and architecture. So we complement each other well, which I think is a good thing. I always imagined I'd marry a field biologist. But I think in reality, that was just a narrow view that I couldn't see another option.
Mhm.
But I think that one of the secrets, and I think that it's true for both of us, one of the secrets is that when you do something that you love, you
Mhm.
don't have to draw a line between work and play.
Nice. Very good advice. So, as the author of Art of the Garnish, I've come to ask each of my lady guests, what's your favorite cocktail? So I want to ask, do you have a favorite or two? Uh,
So I have a few new favorites.
okay.
Um, One of which is closing arguments.
Oh, I love the way that sounds.
So
Counselor,
it's
counselor.
got mezcal,
Uh-huh. I love it already.
which is such a great flavor, and it's also got chartreuse.
I love that. All the herbs.
Yeah, so it's a very complex drink. Now, my husband knows the secret recipe. I think it has Luxardo, fresh lime, but he has been a mixologist extraordinaire of late. So
Oh,
when you come over, we'll make you some mixed cocktails in our Tiffany shaker, and we'll put them in the etched glass stemware, and
that's
yeah, well,
here. I'll show you. But this sounds like way too perfect because in my mind I'm already there. These are all my books that I've written or contributed to, Chrissy. So you haven't seen them, which is great. Is when I named this "Ladies Who Lunch Conversations," it's because I contributed 3 chapters to this Savoring Gotham book, and
mm,
one of the chapters is on ladies who lunch because the women used to run the city and all the philanthropy and art while the husbands in those days were out working, and lunch was king, and the front of the house was too. And then my Hamptons Long Island homegrown cookbook, and then the other one is public garden management. But this is the book, so we'll have to get one for Peter so that he can see
yes,
through my own heart doing that, because cocktails are fun, and I always talk about them as garden to glass, because that's how I got into writing a lot of things, because for me the plants were everything, so they're rather inspiring in and of themselves. But I will I will render your favorite cocktail as a watercolor, and then I make them into cocktail napkins, and we sell them with your cause, your favorite cause. So you'll have to think about that and let me know what your favorite cause is. So we'll go from there.
sure.
Yeah. So thank you. I will say to the audience, we had some technology issues, which is rather rare, but Chrissy hung in there, and we said we're not quitters, so we made it happen. So I appreciate your steadfast willingness to come on and inspire others. I mean, you are truly an inspiring woman, and the work that you do and the life that you lead. So I thank you from the bottom of my Art of the Garnish heart, and Ladies Who Lunch. So any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, tell your ladies who lunch to come out to Plum Beach in the spring, and I'll put them to work on a
Okay.
good cause.
Okay. We will do that. Thank you very much, Chrissy. Bye bye.